paradox that this other guy didn't want to take seriously. But if you can solve it, like, because there's a flaw in in saying that there's a being that is all powerful. I was saying to him like, if God is all powerful and He can do everything and and absolutely everything,
Can He create a rock that He can't lift?
Exactly, you know
Okay,
it already.
okay. We said we said that's a nonsensical question to start with.
That's the logical.
We said the question, the fault is in the question, not in the actual, not in God. How many legs does the sun walk upon? How many legs does the sun?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فتعالى الله الملك الحق ولا تعجل بالقرآن من قبل أن يقضى إليك وحيه وقل رب زدني علما.
He said, yeah, we're this close to creating a flag. Next year we'll have a flag. 10 years later, I'll have a flag. So when you say, yeah, we can create a break, and I'll say, oh, no one's done it. No one's done it. Right now.
Do you think science, like, do you think there's a reason to assume that a lot of people would believe in things that are completely made up?
Say that again, sorry?
Do you think there's a reason to believe that a lot of people, billions of people, have the ability to believe in things that are not actually true?
People do believe. People do.
Because there is like maybe 200 religions, right?
Yeah.
And you believe in Islam or
Islam, yeah.
I assume that because of the beard.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. No problem.
So it's like, so about like you're denying 199 religions.
Yeah.
And how many people are practicing non-Islam religions? Billions of people.
Yeah. So.
And that's my one. Like I assume that I'm not a perfect being
Yeah.
because I'm pretty much like 0.00001% different from everyone else. If millions of people can believe in rubbish, which you would call it, and I would also call it, that religions that are not Islam.
Then why wouldn't you do the same thing? Maybe we have reasons.
They also have reasons.
No, let's analyze the reasons. Let's analyze the reasons. So, for example, let's just focus on belief in a creator, and then based upon that, then we can analyze the other religions.
Yeah. So why is there a reason to be a creator? I don't agree with the argument you did before about the logic and reasoning. But you have another argument.
Let's just go over it. Let's just to understand what you said. So you said there is no actual order. It's only a perception.
We're not agreeing on a fundamental basis about this argument. So can we go to another one?
No, because
you're not going to convince me about it.
That's fine, but we're having a discussion where you're speaking English. I'm understanding your English. I'm processing it, and I'm understanding the meaning of the word you're saying. Yeah, these are just vibrations of air coming out of your mouth, but I understand them. That shows that there is order already. So we can't have this conversation unless there is order. Unless I have an ordered brain, and you have an ordered brain, and you have an ordered complex system that's able to produce air in a certain sound that emits from your body with certain meanings. That assumes. Go on, do your thing. Yeah, of course, no problem. How are you? We can agree that there's order because we're having this discussion. There must be order in us. For us to even reflect on the universe and have this discussion, there must be some order that we're both, an order that works for you and works for me, that we're both communicating with. I'm talking on a basic, natural level. There must be something where I'm just.
Or it could be random, which is what the position of most scientists is. Like it could be just like if there's a million, if there's like billions of universes, we just ended up with this like arrangement.
Yeah.
So that doesn't have to be order. It could be random.
It's random. Okay. So that's basically a religion. I'm telling you that now. It's actually a religion. I'll explain why, but that's actually a religion. What's happened is we've seen order, and really deep down, outside of this conversation, you would never actually deny that there is order. You don't live your life like that. You put on this jacket because you believe that, we can kind of judge from the clouds and judge from the weather outside that it might be cold, so I'm going to wear this jacket. Your day-to-day, the basics of your life is that there is order. It's only when we have these kind of deep intellectual discussions that, actually there's no order. we live our lives. There is order.
Like events, for an example, I would like a lot of people would go like, okay, so I went and I prayed, and then after that, that thing happened, and therefore there's like that affected what happened.
What I'm talking about is more what's known as daruri, more necessary than that. I'm saying that there's order. For you to observe a person praying and he may or may not get his prayers answered,
random.
Yeah, that's random. But you're observing.
Destiny.
No.
Destiny
Don't go down
too.
that way. Don't go down that way. I'm saying there must be order for that person to pray. I'm saying for you to even know whether or not, for you to say the statement there is no God, that requires order. That on a basic level. Don't talk up here. Just talk basically. There must be order. You cannot understand anything I'm saying if there's no order.
But I want to take the chance to because you seem to know a lot about religion.
I don't know too much.
And I talk to my parents a lot. There's a lot of questions they can't answer.
Are your parents religious?
Yeah, they're Muslim.
Okay.
And I was brought up with that. So we've had a lot of discussions, and they always end up with we can't answer everything, and you need to go talk to someone that knows something. And
Which is a fair point.
There's a lot of questions that we've come up to.
That's your subjective experience. I can't judge that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's why I
your
want
parents
to
did.
collect knowledge from you about my questions.
If I don't know it, then I'm gonna have to go do the same thing that your parents said. If I don't know the answer, I'm gonna have to go and ask somebody that knows.
Do you believe in destiny?
No. Let's focus on belief in the Creator. Why?
I wanna get
No. I want to get my question answered.
Yeah.
Is there order in this world?
You think there's order?
Hang on, you just asked her a question, assuming that she understands it. She can't understand it if there's no order.
No, look, if language, if we're talking about language, we're making sounds, and then we kind of both agree that okay, this sounds means that. We're making meaning.
But look.
It's not already meaning. We're creating meaning.
But look. The ear is a complex thing that picks up, that is ordered. The ear just on its own. I'm saying to have speech, do you know how much order there has to be in order for there to be a meaningful conversation? I'm not talking up there, I'm just talking on a base level. Order is...
Yeah. Why do you think complexity means that there's a God?
Okay, now, is there complexity or not?
There's complexity. Why does that mean there's a God?
So hang on. Can we just say, first of all, is there order? Do we see order and complexity in the world around us?
No, there's
So we don't.
absolutely no
Okay.
order.
So then
we
the sign.
are
Okay.
making meaning out of
That's
what
fine.
we see.
That's fine. So I'm gonna go back now. You claim to be a proponent of scientism. Remember, you said earlier that science was the only way we can establish the truth. I'm saying from the scientific method, the assumptions that underpin the scientific method that science cannot operate on is that this universe exists. First assumption, philosophical assumption. Second philosophical assumption, this universe can be observed. And the third philosophical assumption, that it follows a rational order that can be explained to other rational minds.
I don't agree on
Then,
those 3 points.
then you don't accept scientific method.
That is not the scientific method.
These are the underpinning philosophical assumptions of the scientific method.
Why do you
What
think
is
that
the scientific method? The science is that the study of the physical world.
Yeah.
The assumption of that is that we're able to study the world, meaning that it exists, it's ordered, it's observable, and it's ordered. Otherwise, you
Why
cannot
does
have.
it have to be ordered? Can you explain that logically? That you can't just say that is what the scientific method is, and then when I ask you why is that, then you need to logically
I'm saying
explain
this.
that.
I'm saying if you used to ask your professor of science or professor of the philosophy
You
of
would
science,
say that there's an order.
he would say that these are the assumptions of science. These are the science. The scientific method cannot operate unless these philosophical assumptions are given. Now you're telling me they're not true, but yeah, I still believe in the scientific
Just
method.
because, I'm saying, for example, okay, that tree is 15 meters tall. I assumed meaning. That tree was just a length, and I said it is 15 meters tall. I created a system on how to interpret the world.
Yeah.
I created that system.
You,
just like mathematics.
in order for you to create, there must be some order. Otherwise, you're just matter that has no understanding of purpose, no understanding of order, no understanding of right or wrong, or complexity or anything like that. But the fact that you can observe these things shows me that you are ordered.
No, look, that tree was a random length, and then I said that is 15 meters exactly. I created a system on how to interpret what that means,
Okay.
so that everyone also can agree about that tree is 50
My friend,
meters tall.
you're talking way up there. I'm saying just on the basic level. There is no discussion, there is no scientific method, there is no observations that we can make unless we live in a real universe, true or false?
Unless we live in
Real universe, real world. There's a real world. It really does exist. That we can observe this real world.
Yes.
And
we
that
have senses, but it doesn't have to be
and that these rational explanations follow an order that we can explain to other rational minds.
I mean,
If that's not true, then I'm sorry, your problem is not with God, your problem is the scientific method.
logic.
No, that's not logic. I'm saying the scientific method is underpinned by these logical, rational things. If you don't believe in them, then you cannot have the scientific method. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's like basically you're sitting on the edge of that tree, and I'm going to say this branch is called the scientific method. But when you take away the underpinning assumptions of it, you're basically sawing away the branch that you sit upon.
I don't agree with that.
I'll just give you one verse because you need to do some deep reflection on this.
The reason I don't believe in God is because you are not like. Let's stop analyzing the scientific method. I'm not saying that science is perfect. I'm saying that religion is not perfect, and that's why I don't just make assumptions.
Earlier, you said you don't believe in God because there is no empirical evidence. And I asked you to clarify, do you mean basically in line with the scientific method? You said yes. There isn't, from the scientific method, we haven't found God. We haven't observed God. I said to you, the question of God is not a scientific question. Hang on. Denny, please. Allow me just to finish. So just to recap where we're going. Now, you mentioned that, what was the last point I mentioned, sorry? So yeah, the scientific method, So you said that we haven't come across God from the scientific method. I said to you, the scientific method has certain...
But you don't agree with science either. You don't like...
You're jumping.
For example, you just said,
Yeah.
remember something. Do you think that is like... That could actually affect your memory?
Denny, you're jumping. You're not going to understand why we don't eat pork, or why we grow our beards, or why we...
understand.
No. Because there's a premise to them. Why do we grow our beards? Because Allah said so. You don't believe in Allah, you're not going to understand why we say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem.
But you don't do anything.
Denny.
You pick and choose also.
Denny, I'm just trying to come down to recap where we are. Everything else is based upon this fundamental belief. Everything else in all religions, especially Islam, is a secondary to the belief in God and the belief that we are subservient to Him based upon the actions that He's done for us. So we don't believe, you might not believe Muhammad is a prophet of Allah because you don't even believe Allah exists. So now we just go back to the thing. We're in a world around us. We can look around this world and we can see that there is order. Whether you like it or not, there's order. Otherwise, you're not having this conversation with me. Basically, you're not hearing what I'm saying. Okay? There is order. Okay? Now, this order is either a product of knowledge or a product of no knowledge. Like this cup. It's either a product of knowledge or it's a product of no knowledge. There's no third option. To say I don't know, it doesn't answer the question. It's just a statement of your stance at the moment. But it's either a product of knowledge or it's not. So now what we would say as Muslims, just to go back to something you mentioned earlier, that this question of is there a God, it's not a scientific question. Because science is the study of the physical world using observation, experimentation, and repeatability. What we're saying is that God is not like a physical being that's within the universe that we can apply. So what we're saying is the physical world, how did it get there? On that level, the level that underpins the scientific method. There's a rational order that the universe follows. Therefore, this is where the belief in God comes into. Could it have been matter that organized in itself to appear designed? Or is it the product of a knowledgeable creator with a will, with power and mercy? So what we would say,
Let's assume that then. Let's assume that there is a creator and stuff. Why is your creator the right one? Then there needs to be evidence for that. Because I could now claim that Santa Claus is the creator of God, and then I can tell you that he told me that also these are the rules and stuff like that.
If you're patient enough, we can go through it. But we need to establish the first one. We need to establish the firm foundation. Firstly, that there is a knowledgeable creator. There's one statement that one of my teachers, Abu Iyad, mentioned to me, basically, and that is, whoever controls your perception of the world, that has an effect on the observation of God's actions. God has given life, God has created us, God has done this. When your perception of the actual world around you is distorted, that basically means that your view of the effect of God's actions is also distorted. And when that's distorted, your relationship to how you're going to worship Him and be grateful for these actions that He's done, that's also going to be distorted. So now, the fact that earlier you said, well, there is no order, that shows me that your perception of the world has been distorted. So of course you're not going to be able to see Allah's actions. You're not going to be able to say see what Allah's.
Do you think your perception is perfect then?
I think Islam is perfect, but me as I can basically fall short. But as Islam as a religion, I believe that's perfect from Allah. However, I can fall short. I can basically be in accordance with Islam. Hang on. I could either be in accordance with Islam or I could be in opposition to Islam. As for Islam, I believe it's perfect. Yeah.
It's not.
Okay. So now it's the belief in the Creator. Everything else, why we grow our beard, facial hair. Yeah.
I don't care about those things.
Yes,
really,
yes. But to understand it, you're just mentioning other secondary issues. I'm saying it needs to be pinned down. If you don't understand this first primary issue, all these secondary things are just going to go straight over your head. You're not going to be able to grasp them because your worldview is different. Your worldview is that matter organized itself to appear designed. There is no absolute morality. There is no right or wrong. It just appears that way because matter organized itself that way. What we would say is that this ordered world, like this cup here, is a product of knowledge, power, and intent. You are more complex than the cup. So therefore, more knowledge is required, more power is required, and more intent.
We gave that cup meaning just like we gave these glasses meaning.
Is that a product of knowledge or not?
That is a product of knowledge.
Is that more?
We gave it meaning.
Yeah. Is that more complex than you or less complex than you?
I mean, it's less complex.
It's less complex. Okay. So in order for me to make you or something that resembles you, I would need to have more knowledge than to make this cup. I would need to have somebody that's good in art, for example, can make a cup. But to make a house, you need more knowledge to make. Look at that house over there. Yeah, we can just look at that as an example, and we can see that there's levels in knowledge. That cup, I can in an arts and crafts class, I can make a cup. Yeah, but I can't make that house fully functioning like that. Yeah. So what I would say is that you are more complex than the house, the cup, everything around. You are more complex. The universe itself is more ordered and more complex. So that requires more knowledge, more power, with a greater will. And also we see mercy in these things. These are the evidences for our Creator. Do we agree on that?
You could also say time is also a factor. Like in one day, maybe you could build a wall this big, but in 100 million years, you can build a wall that is as big as this whole place. If you give it time, complexity can emerge.
Key word, you can build. Yeah, meaning it's a product of knowledge. So
evolution is not an act of someone.
Okay. So now the evolution, this is kind of gonna get very, very technical. What I would say is go look into the two definitions of science. There's a website called aboutatheism.net. The two definitions of science. We have science that we can all observe, and then we have basic underlying premises based upon your religion of naturalism, that there is no creator, matter can organize itself. I can observe fossils and I can observe certain things that we see, and based upon my naturalist religion, there is no God, there is no prophets, there's no such thing as the afterlife or anything like that. There's only naturalistic worldview, matter, materialism. Now by my religious belief, which is a really religious belief, I'm forced to explain these observations in a certain way. But basically what I'm saying is we can observe the same things, but because you have naturalism as your starting point and I'm open to theism, your explanation is forced to make you explain these observations in a natural way. Now what we would say is that evolution, what we say is that
we're just not agreeing. You're saying certain things and like we're just not agreeing on the definition of this.
Okay, so
you're trying to make me agree to it so that you then can.
I'm saying your starting point is naturalism, materialism.
Rationality.
No. That's not. Rationality is not materialism. Your starting point is that that only matter exists. Earlier you said only science. Science is the only thing that can prove truth. Okay? Your starting point that only matter exists. Now, if your starting point is that only matter exists, prove God, which is immaterial. You can't do it. So you
can't prove it or disprove it.
Yeah, no. But your starting point means that it's impossible to prove it. So you're not open to actually evidence to check. Why? Because your starting point is materialism.
It's logical to assume
that only matter exists.
I think it's logical to assume that it's impossible to prove the existence of God. Yeah, that is a pretty logical assumption.
But I would say that based upon your starting premise, that only matter exists, that there is no other, that only matter exists, that you cannot show, you cannot actually observe, as in under the microscope, a spiritual, a non-physical being, like a god or an angel or stuff like this. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
that's pretty logical to assume, yes.
yeah, but your starting point is that there is only matter. Now, if there's only matter, does matter understand purpose?
But if matter understands purpose.
Yeah,
no.
purpose is something that comes from a knowledgeable,
Yeah.
knowledgeable
Do you think
thing.
we have purpose?
Is there any purpose?
I don't think there's any purpose. No.
Does your heart have a purpose?
I mean, yeah. I mean, in that way, yeah.
Yeah, so
there's
your
not
heart-
a purpose of life.
So, but your heart has a function, a purpose. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it has a purpose inside of my
Yeah,
body.
yeah.
That's a good one.
So what we would say is there any such thing as absolute truths?
No,
Sorry, say that again.
it's not an absolute truth.
Is that an
Really.
absolute statement that you just made?
You're just fucking with my brain now.
No. You just made an absolute statement that there is no absolute truth.
Okay,
I'm saying,
let's
is
say
that
like
is
this.
that absolutely true? That
let's
there's no
say-
such thing as absolute
let's
truth.
say that I think there isn't an absolute
That,
truth.
yeah, but that doesn't help us in discussion with is there or not. That's you can just say I don't know, but that doesn't answer the question. Is there?
Also claiming that there's God is an absolute statement.
Hang on. For you to say there is no absolute truth, you're gonna have to make an absolute statement to make it. Yeah, absolute truth exists. Yeah, we have concepts of good and evil. Matter itself does not.
No, it's like evil and good is also just something we made up.
There- so-
Why do you think it is bad to to drink alcohol? Why
so
is that immoral?
so there's no absolute
we
truth.
Made that.
So there's no absolute truth. There's no order. There's no purpose in anything.
No, not really.
Okay, it's gonna go around in circles. What I would say.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying here.
what I would say
Can we
is
just take any other
no.
argument here?
What I would say is you just need to basically reflect on your starting point. Reflect deeply on your starting point.
You're stuck with this one argument because you've like made a script and now you're following that script. And
Yeah,
if you don't
yeah.
go, you can't prove God in any other way.
No. I'm
have
saying
this
you
script you have
deny
to follow.
order, you deny absolute truth with an absolute statement, and you deny purpose. That's fine. That's up to you. That's fine. You deny all
Do you
these.
think there's an absolute truth? I think these are things are
If he
absolute.
said yes,
But when it comes to order, I mean, it just depends on how you define it, I guess. Because obviously there's
saying that-
order that in the way like nature functions, but the order that we live under is our made. Like we make the order.
I agree. We have free will. We have of course. There's different levels of it, but on a base level, there is order. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying you wore this jacket today because there was order.
But okay, if I don't know if I said this to you or to someone else, but like because I say that these glasses fit these ears,
You said it to
is
me,
there
yeah.
order? Is
What-
that order?
Yeah.
Or did I make a purpose for these glasses to fit these? Was I created for these glasses to be there, or did I just make that up as like that? and then now
What
they
we would
function?
say, is that the glasses are a product of knowledge, and likewise your ears are more complex and more organized than your glasses, and are likewise a product of knowledge. However, we can see the levels of knowledge, like the cup and the house. The level of knowledge to make your glasses is not the same amount of knowledge to make your ears. So we would say that it's all a product of knowledge, but on different levels.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to disprove religion because your one statement is, for example, the Quran is perfect, but there's so many things that you can disprove in that. So I don't have to prove that science is valid to prove you wrong. I have to just prove that one thing in your book is wrong, and then you're all of what you're saying falls immediately.
Okay.
Get it? And it's very easy to
The,
find
the,
flaws
the,
like
the,
that.
the belief from the Quran is based upon this creator existing.
Okay.
If your
If I
start,
find a
hang on.
fault- Okay, sorry.
If your start point is materialism, and that there is only matter exists, and now we find something talking about paradise or jinn. You've heard of jinn, yeah? So if we found something talking about jinn, and hang on, that goes against materialism. Therefore, the Quran is false. That's if you're saying that, then your problem is your premise that there is only matter
Okay,
exists.
what do you use to prove things right?
Firstly, I have a start. My starting point is this. Yeah, let's talk about belief in God. My starting point is this. I have a natural disposition. Naturally, a natural disposition. Basically, naturally, before I heard about the Quran, before I heard about the Bible, as a baby, growing up as a child, you have a natural disposition to acknowledge a supreme deity, a supreme creator. This is natural. If you don't believe in this, just look around. Look, Oxford done a study on it, Japan they done a study on it, and just look around all the different societies. All of them have this concept of a supreme deity that is found naturally, instinctively with all of them.
Well, all
Allow me to finish.
countries-
Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. You're asking how I know God exists or how I come from. This is how it is.
Most people do it, then it's right. That's your argument.
No, you haven't even heard my
Look at
argument.
most
Just,
countries
my friend.
do have a
I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue. So we have a rational mind as well. This is the second thing. We have a rational mind, so we can look. We can focus around the world, and we can see that there is order. Whether you like it or not, or you were to admit it or not, there is order. And we can see that there is order, there is purpose, and we can see that these things require a rational mind in order for them to exist. This is the logical conclusion. The sum whole of all of our experience, whenever we've observed purpose and order and stuff, from all of our experience, it's been a product of a rational mind. Okay? So now we find something more complex, more ordered, then that's product of a more knowledgeable mind. That's basically what we're saying. And then we also have the Quran, we also have prophets and messengers.
My question was only, how do you prove that? Like, if you're gonna find something out, what method do you use to find that something out if it doesn't say in the book already?
If it's okay, so like in a worldly affair, that's not tied to religion or anything like that. Yeah, we use science. Science is not. It's not a problem.
Then you're flawed in the same way
No,
as
no,
I'm
no, no.
flawed.
Because
Like,
the science that I use is not. It does not have a presupposition of materialism. Sorry, maybe you've understood from me that I'm saying science is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the assumption of materialism. What is science?
we have the same assumptions. We
No,
use
no,
the
no, no,
same
no, no,
ways
no,
to
no, no,
prove
no,
things,
no, no, no,
don't
no.
we?
Your assumption is that only matter exists. My assumption is that material explanations can be true.
Does science prove that?
You don't.
You're using
no,
science
no,
to
no,
prove
no, no.
that.
You need to just study what is materialism and is that the only valid method, and study is it possible that there can be something outside of matter, consciousness, stuff like that.
So do you think the scientific method?
I believe the scientific method is true. It was actually a Muslim that actually kind of codified it. I actually believe the scientific method. Don't understand from me that I'm against the scientific method. That's not, that whole discussion there was not to attack the scientific method. What I'm saying is this. I can use the scientific method and you can use the scientific method to observe the same thing, observation X. I observe X, you observe X. We've both used the scientific method to come to that observation. How we explain it is different. One, because you have a materialist worldview, your explanations of the observation are bound by your worldview. So let's start, for example, we're going to observe.
That makes science.
Basically, saying that you're never going to find common ground because you only believe that matter exists. There's two approaches to observation. He says your approach is that you only believe matter exists. His approach is that there's things outside of matter as well, like non-physical things. And if you don't agree on those, if you're not talking from the same approach, you're never going to find common
But
ground.
with science, everyone can agree that something is true. Like with science, we can all prove like that.
I'm going to wrap up soon anyway.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You should wrap up. It's cold.
Yeah.
Do you think there's absolute truth within the scientific method?
Within the scientific method,
Do you think something can be
absolutely
absolute
true.
truth?
Within the scientific method, obviously observation. If the observation changes, then yeah, it wouldn't be absolute truth in it.
Yeah, but earlier you claimed that there is.
Yeah, but
absolute
not because of the scientific method. I'm saying outside of that. You're talking about the science. You're talking about evolution and Darwinian explanation of the fossil record, and you're talking about the explanations. I'm talking about not just the observation. I'm talking about how we underpin the scientific, how we explain, and the discussion is on the base level, not on the way up here in a scientific, like I said earlier, in a petri dish. Can we see God? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about underpinning the whole thing.
Yeah. No, but so outside the scientific method, there is absolute truth, but you use the scientific method to prove things, and that lies outside the scientific method. So why do you think that is true?
Yeah. When to prove something using the scientific method, you're not going to say it's absolutely true. It's never going to reach absolute certainty. You're going to say based upon the observations, this follows, and it's probably true. However, if there's a different set of data with different observations, you're going to have a different claim. So my claim is that not.
The religion makes a lot of absolute truth statements, so that's why religion doesn't qualify in the scientific method.
No.
You can't look at religion in a scientific way.
Yeah. The point is this. Earlier, you said that science is the only way to establish truth. Yeah, I'm telling you that scientific method is not it cannot be established using the scientific method. I'm saying the premise itself relies upon certain rational assumptions. So I said that reason is also another means. Now, us as Muslims, which is a theological belief, we also have revelation. You don't accept the concept of revelation. But I'm saying based upon what you do have, you have observation, you have natural inclination, you have sensory perception. Based upon this, you can observe that there is an ordered world, and using your reason, you can infer, in line with your natural inclination, that there is a knowledgeable creator who has ordered these things, and we get benefit from them. We can see the effects of mercy, basically. There are certain things that we are grateful for.
Yeah, but you're making an assumption. You're saying that everything in the Quran is perfect. That's an absolute truth.
Yeah, but that comes later.
Why does that come later?
Because the Quran. Okay, I'll just give you from our scripture. I haven't quoted scripture once, yeah. But from our scripture, I'll just so you can understand our view better. Yeah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that he came to perfect manners. Yeah. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean he came to bring manners? No, he came to perfect it. What does that mean? That innately within us, we have some general understanding of truth, general ability to observe and to infer and to basically come to conclusions. We have that. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is not saying we don't have that, and I'm bringing it. He's saying you have that, and I'm perfecting it.
So he's perfecting our manners, or what do you mean?
Our manners basically means our view on the world. Our view on the world. So we're not saying that we cannot reach absolute. We cannot reach a good or a bad thing, or no good or bad without the Quran. We're not saying that. We're saying that the Quran, it addresses what man has inside him already. Man has a natural disposition and a vague moral compass. Yeah, and mankind has also an intuition and a rational mind where he can kind of the actual word for Arabic for intellect in the Arabic language is aql. It comes from the aql. It comes from the same word that kind of what pulls the camel. You know the reins of a camel. That's what guides a man basically. This is how rich the Arabic language is. But this is basically shows you that we can actually using reason we can establish something is true or something is false. But now when the Quran comes, it calls to those things that you have, these tools that we have already. It's not saying you have no way of understanding truth. It's saying you have the ways of understanding truth. Now use them and reflect on this Quran. Had this been from other than Allah, you'd find it many discrepancies. Does mankind not see that that the heavens and the earth were once joined together, and He created from every living, He created every living thing from water. Hang on, what's the translation of the ayah? But basically, He created every living thing from water. Will He still not then believe? So He gives kind of ways to reflect on this. Will you not believe on this? He gives you signs. So now,
the thing that religious people a lot of times say is that atheists don't want to believe, and I kind of think that's like a weird mistake. Because I'm here talking to you.
I'd say.
It's like we just don't want to do it.
No. I'd say there is.
He's giving us info like that. Oh, the world is made of water. So you still don't believe?
Yeah.
The world is like this. Oh, you still don't believe?
I would say that's the case in a lot of times. It might not be the case all the time, but it's the case in a lot of times. Yeah. Right now, I said to you, hang on, there's order. It comes from a knowledgeable creator. Just the first part of that there's order. You didn't want to accept it. Will you still not believe? Hang on, we're having this conversation now. Will you still not believe there's order? You're going to answer me back with a rational answer, I'm assuming. You still not going to believe there's order?
I don't think there's order.
You just answered me back, so you prove there's order. I got you. So what I'm saying is that when you reflect on the Quran at the starting point, and if you understand, there's levels to okay, go on this website I'm going to tell you. Make sure you check it out, aboutatheism.net. Anybody that's looking at it that wants to kind of talk about the subject as well, I recommend aboutatheism.net. Understand that a lot of the atheism or the atheistic views that we're seeing today, there is emotion behind it. It's not just a pure scientific. There is emotion behind it.
We're always biased. Of course we're biased.
Yeah, but we need to be able to highlight that bias.
What's it called? They call it
Confirmation bias and something. Yeah.
All of that shit. Like what I'm just saying is like.
I'll just give. Look, we've spoken a lot. I've given you a reference about atheism.net. I'd love to carry on this discussion maybe another
Can I
time.
just give you this one paradox that this other guy didn't want to take seriously?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can solve it, like, because there's a flaw in in saying that there's a being that is all powerful. I was saying to him like, if God is all powerful and He can do everything and and absolutely everything,
Can He
should
create a rock that He can't lift?
Exactly, you know it
Okay,
already.
okay. We said
Is
that.
it-
We
that's
said
like-
we said that's a nonsensical question to
that's the
start with.
logical- That's the
It's-
logical.
we say the question, the fault is in the question, not in the actual, not in God. How many legs does the sun walk upon?
What?
How many legs does the sun walk upon? No. How many legs? There's an assumption in the question. Okay. The question is that the assumption is that there's legs and that the sun has. We just need to enumerate them. Okay. So in the question, yeah, I can pose you a question, but the question be faulty. Yeah. So what I'm saying with that question, if God is so powerful, can He create a rock He can't live? This is a like a contradiction in terms. It's not a real thing. It's just words that you've put together. So if he did it, that would be a rock that would be a rock that was lifted that couldn't be lifted. It's a contradiction in terms. It's not actually. It's not a
I
real.
get it,
It's not a
fine.
real thing.
I get it, fine.
It's not a
He's
real
saying,
thing.
like, there's an error in the question because if you would ask how many legs does the sun have, you can't answer that question.
Because there's an assumption in the question. So what I'm saying is questions can be faulty, and that's an example of a faulty question because there's a contradiction in it. The result would be a contradiction. A rock that was lifted but can never be lifted. It doesn't exist in reality.
That's good. Like my parents would never have been able to answer that question. So
But
it's
your
cool
your
that
parents
I got to
answered your
talk to you.
question. Your parents, with the basics of Islam that they knew, they answered your question.
Oh.
They said, ask the people that do know. And I'm not saying I do know because I never came up with this from my head. I got this from scholars, from Islamic scholars that have spoken on this issue. I think Sheikh Muhammad Amal al-Jami mentioned this, yeah? If I remember correctly, Sheikh Muhammad Amal al-Jami. So now, I've basically done what your parents have told you to do. Go and ask the people that know. So I would say, look at this, and you've just spoke to one Muslim. I'm not a Muslim scholar or anything like that. I'm a working man, family, isn't it?
You're a nice
So,
Muslim.
inshallah. May Allah, you're a good man as well. You're a good man as well. So what I would say, may Allah accept it from us. So what I would say is that do this discussion with not from a point of view of just academic data. It's not just academic data. If God exists, the repercussions of this is huge. The consequences of this is a huge discussion. It's not a discussion that you're just gathering data for some kind of coursework. This is a real conversation that should basically have an attachment to your heart. This should be a real conversation. You have things that you are grateful for. If I was to give you £2 million for your eyes, you would never accept it. You say no. So you value your eyes. You value your life. We've been here and we've been breathing in and out. That shows that you value these things. Now, what we would say is that value and that gratitude, it goes back to the people, to the one that put it there. So this subject is not just a subject on data. We're not just gathering data here.
Maybe I can make a good analogy. So you know there are some islands that basically live on a different place and the earthquakes technology can happen anytime. So if I live on the island and I do it just purely on collecting data, I was like, oh, you know what, it's going to be a Richter scale of 9 today, just for data. And I don't think about, okay, I need to do something now, like get out. What will happen in the end? What's the repercussions? Huge. It's the same example. If you just collect data for the sake of collecting data, why are you
We're
doing it?
drawing conclusions out of our data all the time.
Yeah.
No, I understand, but if you don't do anything, I understand.
There must be an effect.
We are doing,
There must be an effect.
there is an effect.
Yeah.
First we discover these diseases, then we make medications for the diseases.
No.
By collecting data and solving the
That,
questions.
I get
that's
that.
fine. That's
But
fine.
you're
That's
not
fine.
doing
That's
it-
fine.
but
That's
what
fine.
you're doing now-
What we would Jazakallah khair. What we would say is again reflect on this with just an openness and actually be willing to understand it. Be willing to actually step out of your worldview for a second. And it all starts with what I mentioned earlier, that my teacher Abu Iyad Abjad Rafiq mentioned. He's the author of that website basically, and he mentioned a statement, I think is from Ibn Taymiyyah, where he got it, that I mentioned it to you earlier. Whoever controls your perception of the world around you controls your observation of Allah's actions, and whoever controls your observation of Allah's actions controls your gratefulness inside you towards those actions. So now, if your perception of the world is that there is no order, there is no purpose, there is no things like that, it's going to have a knock-on effect.
You're assuming that God is making actions here. And
Yeah.
that creates a lot
No,
of problems.
I'm
with
saying,
that
I'm
statement.
saying that the fact that there is order, this is an effect of God's actions. Denny, pleasure speaking to you. What's the website I told you to look onto?
I don't know. What did you
I said it a few times. About atheism.
About atheism.
.net.
.net. I probably already checked it out.
I don't think it's kind of. It's,
About atheism.
yeah, it's kind of relatively
Where's
unknown.
this gonna be?
I'm not sure. I don't know whose these are, but
He's just
what's that there? CC Dawa, and I don't know the other one.
That's the YouTube channel, SC Dawa.
Both of them. This is.
No, that's SC Dawa. That is for Speakers Corner UK.
Yeah.
Is this the YouTube channel?
YouTube
Let me take a
Type
picture
in
of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
so I
SC
can
Dawa.
get it.
I'd love to continue as well. Are you visiting here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaving London in like 1 day or so.
Maybe we can continue over WhatsApp or over email or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So if you want to take my email, that's fine. I'll give it to you off camera if that's all right. Yeah. Get this off.